Welcome back to Actually Olympia, the podcast, Kelly.
Well, it's been a minute, Jay.
It has. Today's episode is focused on the budget.
A special episode.
In fact, it's entirely on the budget.
Entirely.
And coincidentally, the reason we're focused on the budget and the reason we haven't been here in a while is because we've been working on the budget. So this has been a really challenging budget year. It needed a lot of time and effort, but with me and the council and the department directors. So we gave that our time and energy in the last part of the year. But I'm glad to be back here in 2025, kicking off our Actually Olympia podcast to talk about that budget.
That would be good. And this is the first Actually Olympia podcast where we don't have like a guest for us to focus our attention on.
Yeah.
So I get to focus my attention on you.
Yeah, we have an empty couch, which means I'm at the mercy of the questions that Kelly gets to ask.
Yeah, I can't wait. I know few people get to be at my mercy. So yeah.
Well, let's jump in.
Okay. Well, let's start talking about the fact that 2025 was a really tough budget year. So, talk a little bit about how we got here.
How we got here is not something that happened overnight. So I think and I'll say that how we got here is a similar journey that a lot of cities and government entities are in right now.
Right.
In that we our expenses are just growing at a rate that outpaces our revenues. So a good example of that is we had a couple of years there post-COVID where we saw double-digit inflation.
Right.
So cost of everything is up, cost of goods are up, cost of all of our things like our benefits packages, our insurance packages are up. They're rising at a rate that's faster than the revenues that we bring in. And we're 80% people.
Right.
People are what do the work of the city of Olympia and our amazing team here, but we're 80% comprised of people. And so salaries and benefits and all those things, we need to make sure we're paying people to market and that we're taking care of our employees, but that comes at a cost too. And again, everything outpacing the revenues that we bring in. And then layered upon that is the 1% cap on property tax. It is not the only reason why we fall behind, but year over year over year, we see inflation higher than that 1% cap, and that limitation has been really starting to catch up with cities, including Olympia.
Yeah. Well, it is. I've been hearing the news up and down I-5 and across the state of communities that are struggling, especially past COVID. With inflation, people see it in their households. Everything is more expensive going to the store. How does Olympia always likes to do things the Olympia way? Talk a little bit about how the Olympia way of tackling the difficulties, the challenges of the budget.
Number one is we put people first, right? Not just people in the community and our employees as well. So we take an approach to managing our budget that seeks to make sure that we're both delivering on the core services and the things that are important to our community. The water still has to be turned on. The garbage still has to get picked up. When you call 911, someone still has to respond. And so we focus to make sure that those core services are intact and ready for our community when they need them. And then we also survey our community every couple of years to ask them about what's important. And we use that as our guide as we look to make any kind of reductions and are looking for new revenue streams to make sure that we're sustaining the programs that our community has told us are the most important. Right. Things like public safety, climate, the economy, in particular livability, the cost to live in Olympia, housing homeless response are really important priorities for the community that they've continually year over year told us to focus our time and energy on. So we want to make sure that we're delivering on all those things for our community, which community expectations versus budget and revenue are always a hard balancing point, but we work really hard at it.
Right.
The other thing that I always seek to do when I make any kind of suggestions or recommendations to the council around reductions is to have the least impactful as possible on our employees.
Right. And we did have to do some reductions.
We did.
This year. I know that was hard for folks.
This has been the most challenging budget that I've worked on and since 2008, 2009, which is, I think everyone knows what was going on then. We had a recession.
Right.
And we've had some good times. And I think even coming out of COVID, we saw sales tax really increase. And I think city managers across the country, we all prepared for the worst with COVID, thinking that the opposite would happen, that we'd lose revenue. And really what happened is as people stayed home and decided not to travel and to do the other things or leave, they focused on improving their homes and shopping online and doing the other things. And so we saw a pretty robust increase in sales tax. That started to level off now. We're not on a rapid decline or anything that would suggest that we're heading towards recession, but we have started to see sales tax start to level off and get back to kind of more normal numbers.
Yeah.
We're finishing up this year about $1 million behind where we thought we may be. So we have to take all those things into account as we look at next year.
So tell me about the internal work of doing that, because it's about people. How do we address this, the shortfall, the reductions? How did we help people land when we could? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to give a lot of credit to our department directors, to our executive team. One of the things that I asked all of you to do when we looked at this problem is to both look at your own budgets and look for ways to reduce and look for ways to help everyone else. And if there's opportunities, and what I did was sit back and watch the department directors go to work in a way where one department director would say, hey, I know that you are probably going to eliminate this position. I've got a vacancy over here, and I'm willing to take them and train them and give them the skill set so that we don't lose them. And so although we eliminated 27 positions, what we presented to council was actually only 7 employees that were truly at risk of losing their jobs. And now that number's down to 1.
Wow.
Right. So there's 1 person at risk. Now we had a couple people find other jobs and move on, which is always hard, but I'm happy for them that they found other employment very quickly.
Yeah.
And then we were able to kind of place a few others over the course of the holidays as more vacancies became known. So we're down to 1. And so that is just really good work of department directors working with me and working with the council to find a way to get there without a significant impact on the 700 employees that call Olympia their home as their employer.
Right.
The other thing that we did was we wanted to make sure that we gave employees every opportunity to find other placement. And so rather than make those reductions effective at the end of the year and give people really hard news over the holidays, we made them effective end of February. So it allows those employees that are at risk to get through the holidays with their families and then really start to focus their time and energy on finding other employment at the first of the year and have through the end of February. So those are some things that we did. And again, I think just really proud of our work, and I'm really proud of the work of the council. For some of them, this was also their hardest budgets. Anytime we're talking reductions and we're talking about people,
right,
it is very much a heartfelt decision point to make.
And an anxiety, fear-inducing thing for staff, because this is not only do they love working for the city, but it's also their livelihood and it's their families too. So I think I was really impressed to be able to see us take care of as many people so that they have that consistency and know they're still embraced by the city. And I think even those folks who would have been who would had to have leave the city, they have like first right to come back if a position opens. And
so anybody that that is laid off after the end of February will have first opportunity to come back if things get better, and we're going to bring those positions back. And I do hope over time some of those positions were really hard to take and really impactful for kind of not so much externally. I don't think our community will see the impacts as much this year because we really tried to stay away from the things that really mattered and were really important to community members and worked internally, right? In terms of those things. But I hope that we can bring some positions back in the future and that those individuals will get a chance to come back. And, probably the hardest thing for me is, I've been here for almost 26 years. And so I know every one of those people personally.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a lot of really sleepless nights trying to get to a place to give hard news to people. And I sat in on many of those conversations to give hard news to people. And it was a challenging time for sure.
Yeah. But I think we came out of it with our heart.
We did come out of it with our heart.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a very heart-centered leader.
Yeah.
That's a blessing and a curse at times, to be a heart-centered leader, because it's hard sometimes to make those tough choices, but it is the job and it is what I sign on to do. And I couldn't do it the way I do it without a really great group of department directors who always, when I ask for help, do it the right way.
Right.
We have what's called a first team approach, as you know, to how we manage, which is that we put the needs of the city organization ahead of the needs of our own departments.
Right.
And sometimes that means that we've got to make sacrifices that are hard. The best example I'll give to that is we didn't do across the board cuts. I didn't necessarily take all the cuts the same in all departments because we were trying to, again, preserve and be priority driven with the community. However, I had some department directors that gave me more than I had asked for because they knew how hard it was going to be for others to cut.
Yeah.
And that's really
first team
all the way around is for our department directors to say, I know you only asked me for this, but I'm actually going to give you more than you asked for because I know how hard it's going to be for this department director to get there.
Right.
That's pretty amazing.
That is that. Well, it's an amazing crew you've assembled. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And again, I just want to give a big shout out to the council who had to make these difficult decisions right alongside all of us and knowing what the impacts were as they made their decisions. But again, we did this as a team all across the board, council and staff, and I'm really proud of that.
Right. So talk a little bit about some of how this might be felt in the community. What kind of impacts might the community feel? I know we tried to keep a lot of it internal.
Well, let's talk about the numbers for a bit because I think that really helps give scale to the community about kind of what we're talking about here. So we have an operating budget that's around $240 million. So that's everything that we do on an operating side. About 120 million of that is what we call general fund and general fund funded programs. So general fund funded programs don't have an alternative funding source other than sales tax, property tax, B&O. You know, for example, our utilities are funded by the ratepayers. So our community members pay their utility rates, that funds those programs. General fund programs have to come from general fund revenues like the ones I stated. So we're looking at that $120 million piece is where the issue is. A little sliver of our total operating budget. And when we sat down in August to look at where we were for 2025, we had a $12 million gap between expenses and revenues. So that's where we started. And we whittled that down from August to December when council took a final action to about $4 million. So we cut about $5 million permanently out of the budget. We made some efforts to make some one-time updates to our budget, one-time changes. We were a little conservative with our revenues initially, and we were able to kind of, change our revenue projections a bit based on new information. And then it left us with a $4 million gap. And we're blessed at the moment in that council had about $8 million of fund balance above their reserves. And so that gave us an opportunity and a path to use some of those one-time monies. So what that means is that you can't do that forever. So we've got more work to do. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But in terms of community impacts, again, I think I said this, I don't think the community is going to see a lot of impact on their end. We looked at a lot of the internal services that we provide to each other and made reductions there and tried really hard to look how we could do that without impacting those community priorities. So I don't think that's an issue for community members now, but we've got more work to do, as I said. And if we can't find a way to get at that additional $4 million, either with some new revenues or looking at additional reductions, we do start to get at and start to dig into those priorities that the community cares about.
Right. And we have done like little things like there's a reduction in our lobby hours because there's been a shift around with staff because of reductions. And so the community will see, in the next month or so that the lobby hours might be a little different than they are right now, but the service is still there for them in other ways, online, by phone, that sort of stuff. So we're still taking care of the community in the same way there, but there just might be some shifts in how we might do something.
That's a good point. Yeah. One of the things that, if anything good came out of COVID, I don't know if I could say it that way, but it's that we did learn to leverage our technologies in a different way. I mean, we use Zoom more than we ever did before, and it's created, these hybrid opportunities with our community to connect with us in a different way, even through council meetings. So you can tune into a council from home now and participate from home. Right. And the other thing is our community members learned that we have a lot of online services. So just about everything that you can do at our front counter, you can do online. Right. And so we looked at that, and we did make a reduction, as you stated, around our customer service model. So we're going to be closed on Fridays starting in February. Right. But I think our community got used to using our online platforms in 2020, 2021, and I think a lot of people have shifted that way. Right. Right. Yeah, I think it's a good thing, and to know that staff are taken care of, and that's super important for the community too. Yes. Because our staff are community members as well, and layoffs impact the community in that way as well. They do. So that's good to know. We talked a little bit about how big the budget is, and a little bit about how the budget touches people. Mm-hmm. I like to think about. I mean, you're a budget guy. And well, thank you. Yeah. You're a budget guy. Yeah. And I'm not a numbers person. Yeah. But I've seen that, the budget is more than numbers. Talk a bit about like the philosophy or the kind of function of a budget, So budgets are a financial accounting of what we do, right? Right. That's how some folks see budgets. In fact, we have a responsibility to our community to be transparent. We also have an edict to have a balanced budget. We can't work in a world where we're working beyond our means, right? So when we have not to, like my house. Well, I think what we learned through Oli Strong is there are a lot of people who are living beyond their means, which is a different topic and a different story we'll talk about on another podcast. Yeah. But they are an accounting of where we are, but our budget also is a very important way we tell our story about what we're focused on, right? It tells the community what's important and where we spend our money, right? And so we're shifting. So when we think about how we do this in the future, one of the things that we're looking to do next year is make this shift into what we call priority-based budgeting. So our normal budget document, the document, if you go online right now and pull it up for 2025, it's like we have always done. It's by department. So you can pull up the police department and see how much money we spend on police or fire or public works and break down those components. Priority-based budgeting takes our budget and it racks and stacks it based on our community priorities. And so you may have a priority around public safety. Well, that's where all of police and fire, maybe code enforcement, all those pieces of the budget will be in one section in one area. And we'll have performance measures for those areas that are very specific to them. So it's a different way for us to talk about and with our community about our budget and to storytell about our budget, because you'll be able to literally see how much money we dedicate to each priority area. So we're going to make a shift as we head into 2026 to look at that this year. Okay. The other thing that priority-based budgeting is going to help us do is really evaluate where we spend our money and how we spend our money, and perhaps provide us some opportunities for where we might look at other sources of revenue. So the consultant team that we're going to uses an AI program that does a lot of this work for us. But the other thing it does is it highlights where other cities, so they have 400 cities they've done priority-based budgeting with, how they have paid for their programs, and they're going to tell us how other cities pay for programs just like ours. So it may show us some innovative approaches for looking for funding alternatives. So I'm actually very excited about that work and the future of our budget work.
Yeah. So it's about sustainability,
Yep.
about making the budget more sustainable, right?
It is. So right now, you know, when we're all balancing our checkbooks at home, you want to get to the end of the year and say money in, money out was a wash. And if you're living that way and you're not maxing out your credit cards, life is good. Right. But in a world where the city balances our budget, but we still have $4 million in reserves, that means we're living about $4 million more than what we can support. So we have to do one of two things. We have to find new ways to pay for those things that get at that $4 million, or we got to look for ways to move things around and to pay for those things, or we got to make further reductions. So, and it's a little bit of all those things is what we're working on over this next year.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And budget sustainability, which is a great word that you use.
Yes.
Sustainable budgets, you know, mean over time, we don't, everything's good, and oh, now we got a problem. Right. I really want to work hard in my time as city manager to get us away from the peaks and valleys of budget and get us to a place where our budget year over year is much easier and more predictable for the council, for our department directors, for our employees, and for the community.
And how do you keep the budget sustainable and connected to the community as well?
I think a lot of the work that your team does is a good place to talk about. I mean, we're here doing a podcast together, talking with our community about what's going on with our budget. I think that's kind of number one. Two, it's making sure that as we communicate throughout the year about the things we're working on, that the community continues to see the value in the work that we're doing as an organization, that they see that the programs and services that we're offering are making the difference that the community wants to see made. And they're signaling to us when they don't think that those are such. And then when they do signal that, or their priorities change year over year, then we move our budget around to meet those priorities. So we may have 5 top priorities for 2026, but by the time we get to 2030, those priorities could change. And they're going to change based on us talking to our community about what's important to them. And that's how we do budget the right way.
Right. And I think that's it for me. I think that's all my questions. Anything you want to say else about the budget to the community?
Yeah, I mean, like, as you said, this has been a challenging year. This has been a challenging budget. It's been hard on council and staff in a lot of different ways, but I want to just continue, like I've said it many times, to express how proud I am for the work that we've done this year. We've taken a really difficult process and we've been very transparent with our employees. We've been very transparent with the community, and we worked together in partnership right alongside the council to deliver a budget that is going to continue to move our community forward, even in challenging times. And we have a commitment long-term to continue to do that. So it's going to take more hard work, but we're going to roll up our sleeves in 2025 and get ready for 2026. And as you know, I'm a very optimistic person. That is my nature.
Yes.
And I am very optimistic that we'll continue to find a way to make our budget more sustainable over the long term. So that when I get to the end of my time as city manager and I'm handing off this budget to the next city manager, I don't want them to say, wow,
what the Sam Hill?
What did Jay leave me with? Instead, I want them to say, wow, I've been given a gift and I've been left with some pretty good footing. So that's the work here.
Well, I'd just like to say that, you know, I've been observing this through the whole thing, and I've seen the toll it's taken on you. I've seen how seriously you've taken and how personally you've taken the impacts it's had on our staff and the folks who come here every day that, you know, you build relations with, family.
Yep.
You know, our Oli family. And
Yep.
it's just been impressive and heartening that you've led this first with your heart.
Well, thanks, Kelly. I appreciate that. I appreciate you and appreciate our employees. They mean everything to me. And I'm going to continue to work this process in a way that puts them and the community up front.
Cool. All right.
All right. Thanks, Kellie.
Thanks, Jay. Hey, thanks for listening. You can find Actually Olympia everywhere you get a podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You'll find a video version of this on olytv3.com. You can also download the Oly TV app on your phone. It's really good. I keep telling people this.
One of my favorite apps.
Yeah, mine too. Mine too. I watch it during council meetings.
You're not supposed to say that out loud. Yeah.
So maybe you want to talk about what to expect next time.
Yeah. So, I think last time we did a podcast towards the end of the year, and I think we had said next up, we're going to talk to our climate program director. Yeah. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to invite Paul Simmons, our parks director, in for our next podcast. So we'll bring Paul in next month. Mm-hmm. There is just some timely information around things going on in our parks program and a lot of exciting projects to give updates to our community on.
Yeah.
And it'll give Dr. Braff just a little more time as we, especially as we get through this current legislative session, mm-hmm. to kind of see how things go at the state level with budget and how those might impact our climate programs. And so we'll welcome Paul Simmons, Parks, Arts, and Recreation Director, to our February podcast. Looking forward to it.
Cool things, and maybe we can get back to our mailbag as well. So for that, you can send us a question. You can send it to. I have to use my glasses for this because the type is really small. olytv@ci.olympia.wa.us. Remember that no question is too big or too small for us to consider.
Bring them on.
Bring them on. All right. Thank you.